Tell me about it.
So can you tell us your name and why you're here?
Yes, my name is Gopal Panday, and we are located the business property in city of Long Branch, and we're in kind of a strange, precarious situation. We came to this town almost 20 years ago, when and the waterfront, which is just about 2 blocks away from our business property, was engulfed in fire, and the whole place got decimated really. But somehow I got the sense, because of the location of the town being so close to water, I somehow thought that this location has a strange life to its own, and I decided to come to this town and open up a business. Now that is going back almost 20 years now. Since then, the town has improved and things have come about on its own under the natural dynamics of growth through the town and in my area as well. But almost 9 years ago, the city somehow came up with a redevelopment plan in which they decided to do the waterfront area, which is now known as Pier Village and so on. And as normally happens, in the beginning they started taking properties under eminent domain, the process through which the government is allowed to take private properties but for public use, public purpose rather, something like for the making of a widening of a road, making a hospital, or some other public purpose which it would serve. So it's basically meant for the better of all, so one has to sacrifice. But what was happening here in Long Branch was they were taking private properties from people who were settled for 20 years, 30 years, and this place was really not the focus of redevelopers or the developers rather. So they started taking these properties under eminent domain for handing it out over to the developers, and mainly one of the major players were K. Havnanian. And to this process, some people now, as late of going some 3 years or so, they just wisened up to this fact that these properties were being taken for really private gains as opposed to having any public purpose at all. and the city was promising all kind of tax gains and everything, which really never came about, and all kind of concessions were being given to these developers. So a group of something like 35 property owners, they got together, and the streets, these properties were bound by, one is Marine Terrace and so on. So they coined a word called Metotsa, an acronym for their area, which held these 35 properties all together. And they started resisting the taking of these properties. Now we are here today on November 23rd. Unfortunate as it is, 2 days ago, one of the ladies who was living in the same area for almost last 30 plus years passed away. 82 years old, school teacher, and now their children are engulfed in this eminent domain taking of their property. So far as our story goes, it's a kind of a strange scenario. We are kind of in addition to this waterfront development coming into the commercial district of the town, which basically is on Broadway, which is the main street in the town. And my personal property happens to fall between this block, which is next to the Ocean Avenue, by the oceanfront development which has taken place. And this has been now given very arbitrarily to another businessman who operates a business by the name of Sippersteins as developers. They are actually in business of selling paints and all other related stuff which you use in decorating your households and so on and so forth. So basically they are a businessman just like us. And somehow, in all the wisdom, the city authorities, they decided to allocate them as developers, and they have joined hands with another party called Pax Construction, and they are now the designated developers. In this process, almost 2 years ago, when we found out that such a development would be coming about, so we were really thrilled and wanted to be piece and part of that, and we presented our own plan, not knowing that the pretty well players and things were all in place. So there was no room for us really, but without being informed of anything as such, our development plan was entertained by the city administrator, and they looked at it. The plan we had presented was, we own something like 18,000 square feet of property, and on 1/4 of the property we have existing liquor store, which has been functional and actually ever grown ever since we picked up. In '86, this was a almost defunct business. We brought it to life. And to give you some sense of development, the first year this business rang up $195,000 total revenue. Today, in 2007, we ring up close to $1 million in sales. So that contributes to almost $35,000 to $37,000 sales tax generated for the state, 4 jobs created through this small little business, and which my understanding was that the small business is the core of the country's growth. So we were feeling very secure in that sense, that we are in good shape. But so to my surprise, almost 6 months into negotiation and going back and forth with the city, we heard back from them saying that our plan, which tantamounted to something like $13 to $14 million and a 4-story construction or this 18,000 square feet of footprint is not attractive to them, and they would much rather have these business people right across from us develop this place. And they came to be known as Broadway Arts Center, BAC. And as late of just about a month or so, we got served with the papers from the city known as the 14-day notice. So basically that tells you that the property owner has to come to some kind of a terms with the city within 14 days, and otherwise the city would be in a position to go out there and legally pretty well condemn the property and take over. So we had a meeting with the city authorities, and as a last resort we presented our numbers, which were very much in line to the existing market value of the property, but they want to have none of that. And so we are in the middle of a strange kind of a limbo situation. Meanwhile, what's happening to the business is that we are not able to operate functionally as we were 100%. And being a liquor store, this is supposedly to be our peak season, being closer to the Thanksgiving and New Year's, Christmas. This is basically our bread and butter making season. So they have put us in a financially restrained situation, and literally appears like they have very effectively, slowly but surely killed all the businesses they were in this area. And now looks like it's our turn. But hopefully we have our previous litigation, which was in the Superior Court in the town of Freehold, County of Freehold, Monmouth County of Monmouth, and City of Freehold. That was decided against us, not in our favor. So we are in appellate division right now, and we'll see what happens at that level. But the encouraging situation is that there have been at least 5 decisions which have come through the appellate division, and also one decision in the Supreme Court level, which is very encouraging. All the decisions have been in favor of the property owners, where the judges have at the Supreme Court level unanimously decided, all 5 judges, senior judges which sit on the bench, that the process and the interpretation which the local municipalities have followed so far is misinterpretation of even the existing eminent domain laws of the state. So appears like it might get addressed, but nonetheless our lives are in a, so to say, being dragged around all over the place.
So I guess I'd like to start by finding out, like, what has been the direct impact on your business?
Well, our business has been deteriorating slowly because of all the vacancies that have come about in the area.
Can you talk about the timeline in that?
Yes, that's going back almost 3 years now. They have taken out, most of the renters have been either forced out at the end of their leases or rental periods, and that affects local when the local residents starts leaving the area. So we are a corner neighborhood store, and eventually it had to affect us, and it is affecting us now.
And can you elaborate on what it exactly means to be driven out? Because some people might not have an idea on really what that process is, like, you know, because you say driven out, they might perceive it as like, was that harassment? Did it, you know, could you kind of explain that?
Well, most of it has been procedural. Basically, they've been following these tenants have either at the end of the leases or some other ways they have just gotten them some other accommodation and prompted them to get out of the area, so that it's pretty well ripe for them to demolish this and take over.
Now, what is the connection between the developers and the political structure in the region?
The existing developers are here in this area for almost 40 plus years, so they are pretty well known to this administration, existing administration of the city of Long Branch, and the principal of the Broadway Arts Center, who happen to be the developers, is also the director for economic development body of the city. So initially they were actually responsible for bringing in all the businesses and into this area where we are at, Broadway Arts Center district, as they call it, and rejuvenate it. And they were supposedly given all kind of funds which were available to them from the state. And in spite of all the area coming along, this thing has sprung out of nowhere as an addition to the development plans which were directed by the Thompson Group, the master planners for the city, for the waterfront area. So this is where we are at now.
Are there other people that have been working with you, like other business owners that have been working with you that have either taken deals, and to that end, have you been offered any kind of compensation package? Like if they're trying to do eminent domain, usually people would like to believe or are told to believe that they're offered fair market value. So could you discuss that a bit?
Yes. Well, once the scenario of eminent domain comes into play, to even imagine there would be a fair negotiation is kind of out the window, and it's not a possibility. For a common person, until now the understanding was once the city wants to take your property under eminent domain, almost 99.99% of the times the property owner comes out a loser. So they were all the existing businesses which were here in this area, they took whatever they were offered with little or no negotiation. And they have been taken under the market value.
Now, I guess if you don't have specifics, or if you, that's okay, but can you talk about like what percentage that would be under market value that they actually received?
Yes, I can give you from my personal interaction with these people, whatever I had so far, that I was offered from my property $675,000 at the time when the appraisal which I got done, a private party, private appraisers was standing at $1.12 million.
Now, what does this? Was there a city appraisal that had happened for taxes prior to that we could kind of bounce off that number?
Yes, city appraisal for the tax purposes came about as late as almost a year and a half ago, which was even more than the offer made by the developer to take the property. So the whole numbers were all skewed up, and I testified. Actually, there was a bill in the assembly which I was very instrumental in and participated at length. I testified 3 times in front of the assembly. The bill was presented by the chairman of economic development body, which is assemblyman, I believe his name is Burzicelli. And this bill was A3257, which basically addressed the procedural matters of eminent domain taking by the governments, and tried to make it more transparent and a little bit of a compensation issue. To be precise, in eminent domain taking, there is no valuation assessed for the businesses. It's literally zero. So as a business person, it was lost on me that a business which generated $37,000 in sales tax for the state and generated 4 or 5 jobs, all of a sudden has zero value. And another element that dawned on me was that if you are taking somebody's business through eminent domain, literally you are taking their property, their home as well, because once you take somebody's source of income, how they're going to be able to pay for mortgages for their residences, their children's education. So literally you are taking their two properties in one shot. So getting back to this state bill, which was passed actually to the dissatisfaction of almost all the civil participants, and now there was a parallel bill which was put out by Senator Ronald Rice at the state assembly level, which never got a reading and just was pretty well disliked by all the legislators as well. So far as legislative addressing is concerned, we are in a limbo, and anything to look forward is only coming from the court system, judiciary.
Are there any politicians that have come on board with heavy support, or also has there been any strong media attention applied to it?
Yes, specifically public advocate Ronald Chen. He was, my understanding is that he was assigned this as a first of his projects by the governor Corzine for the state as to address, and he really find out all kind of irregularities, and he has given an amicus brief, like the court's friendly brief. In the case of Metotsa, I have earlier mentioned here in Long Branch, and he is also aware of our situation. And another body which is involved in this whole scenario is from Washington DC Institute of Justice. And 2 months ago, one of the senior attorneys, Scott Bullock, visited us and is familiar with the situation what's going on here. But they seem to have their hands full at this point in time, so they're kind of helping us indirectly through our legal counsel, which is Mr. Michael Kasanoff and Red Bank.
Have you seen any push from the developers supporting politicians that have not voted your way, or connection, or is there any connective tissue there?
Well, it's very hard to trace. But there has been all kind of details which is available through various sources at the state level as how all these politicians have benefited from this scenario directly or indirectly.
And
actually,
what has come from those?
Well, one of the councilmen, his name is Mr. Zambrano, he was actually found guilty of, last year, found guilty of taking bribe, and was sentenced for 4 months and a day. And similarly, his older brother, who happened to be in the adjoining town, city of West Long Branch, being the mayor, was also found guilty of taking bribes and has been jailed for a year and a day, I believe.
Now, in both of those situations, do you know who they took bribes from?
I understand they were something to be related with the carting garbage or that kind of a deal. I don't know the exact details on it, but I know these facts from the press and otherwise. And Mr. Zambrano in city of Long Branch, he was instrumental in voting all these development plans which were being put through by the city administration. So he was part of the body. So
so because of that, then do you think there's a connection that loop goes between the developers, this garbage carting thing, which would stand to make a lot of money with any kind of new development, because we would imagine who would get the carting contract.
Yes, it's hard to comprehend that if in one governing body which is basically voting on all kind of these ordinances being passed which affect the development and subsequent things which result of that, is incomprehensible that it can go without filtering through elsewhere.
Well, I guess that brings us right to the core of the issue, which is if you're a person who is buy any real estate, if soon somebody can just take it away from you anyway.
Well, I come from India. I came here almost 37 years ago, so my sense was I'm going to a society which is so upright and of principles which are just about the epitome of humanity. But now at my age I find out that even being such principles entrenched in our constitution, your personal property rights are literally of no good. I mean, if you cannot really exercise them, it's not available to a common citizen, and they are being just trampled over by these influential people of resources. So that's very disheartening to see that our morality seems to have eroded somehow to an extent where we keep on trampling over small little day-to-day average Joe's lifelong possession. I mean, somebody works, it's an American dream to own your own business and own your own home. So my sense was I've really arrived, without being too much of an ambitious person, that I want to be a mayor of a city. And I just wanted to bring about my family. I've got 2 daughters, bring them as an upright people and educate them, which I was successfully doing so far. But then all of a sudden it looks like somebody pulled the rug right underneath me. So all the hope that is left is now through the judicial process, and I hope that the of our chief Justice Sandra Day O'Connor said, if it was an eminent domain case which was in Connecticut known as Kelo case, and the decision was, yes, that was a precedent-setting case, and actually the whole hell broke loose after that, coming under decision of 5-4. That was given in the favor of the city, and I believe there was a company involved, Pfizer, which was trying to develop the area, and that lady got pretty well taken for a ride. And after that, all the municipalities, they thought it was an open season. Then, I mean, what has happened across the country after that is simply unthinkable. It's just not New Jersey. We are the most stark example of eminent domain abuse, but it's happened across the country from California to Maine. So it's basically, I'm at a point where I don't think it's my issue. This is not Gopal Panday's issue or anybody else involved in our suit or anybody else. It's a national issue. We got to simply be able to address this as a society. That is this how we want to live? Because once you start changing the rules of the game, then you're basically giving a signal to an average person that beg, borrow, steal, whatever you can do, just you're on your own. So whatever you can do, we're setting a very bad example. We're setting a very bad example by trampling on the fundamental rights and fundamental assumed freedoms in this country of ours, which is known all across the globe for being a society we are. People look at us, and we have to be exemplary. We have to be exemplary.
You had mentioned Sandra Day O'Connor and comments she had about that bill, and then we kind of got into an aside.
Yes, she was very specific about the decision from the Supreme Court that if we do let this happen, then it would be an open season for, and she mentioned a very definite example that everybody's house and a business would be open for taking, because somebody else can come in and say, well, we can put up something of a better return, better taxable returns for the city, and better economic returns for whoever it is, private party, and just doesn't seem to be right. It just doesn't seem to be right.
Now, when you were in India, had you ever heard of any kind of laws such as these? Like, in other words, when you were talking about, okay, I'm going to make a business, I'm going to get a business here. As a matter of fact, can we just do a little aside and just kind of say how you came to the country and how you ended up with this store?
Yes, I'm an engineer by profession, and I came as an exchange student to Germany. And then after 2 years, I had my friends here who had come here on a scholarship. My older brother came to do his PhD in nuclear physics in State School Albany. So I got a scholarship in University of Toronto in Canada. So I came to Canada, did my engineering, and because of my family being here, I immigrated to United States and just settled down here. But because of I think I was a misfit in corporate culture here. So that has been, I thought that I'm going to find myself a quiet, safe corner where I can just, without elbowing anybody and without the glass ceilings every time I get up from my chair, I'd be able to just bring about my family in an upright manner which every parent conceives. Fortunately, I've been able to educate both my daughters well. They're all settled. And I'm pretty well at my retirement age now. But here I am faced with a strange dilemma that I might be living on Social Security, because that is where it could be headed if the city is able to pretty well exercise eminent domain and take our property for almost peanuts.
So if they take in other words, because I know that you're fighting this right now.
Yes.
So if you just say, you never concede and you say, I am not giving up my property, what happens?
Well, the city is going to, under those situations, the city, I understand, is going to, they have already served us papers, they would go to court and pretty well try to run us through the process. We've been in it for 2 years now, and a substantial monetary expense has been made. We do not have as much deep pockets as the city has. I mean, city has enormous. Actually, when I think about it, I'm basically affording the suit against me, the defense against me with my money. So it's the taxpayers, the money being used by the city to take all these properties and engage in this. The funny part is the city's insurance carrier has declined to cover them for anything more than 25% of the cost if the city engages in eminent domain suits. So rest of the world seems to see something wrong here, but other than the city of Long Branch's administration. And I personally feel let down by the process which is taking so long, and there's a human tragedy in making. I mean, people dying and going through this turmoil, their families enduring day to day, worrying about whether they'll be in their home or like me, I'll be in my business next month, next year. It's very unsettling.
what has happened to some of the other people that this process has already? Do you know of any personal experiences that they've gone through? What were the personal effects of it?
Well, I know one person, his name is Bruce McLeod. It's a known case, pretty well all through the press. He had a Victorian home on the waterfront. His property was taken under eminent domain, and the compensation, I believe, deposited in the court system was $140,000 at the time of taking, which was appraised for $550,000 at that time by the outside appraisers. And at the end of it all, I understand the court has settled the case for $230,000 or so. My numbers could be off, but he definitely did not get the appraised value, anywhere near appraised value of that time.
And this is also including legal fees.
Yes, everything, I believe it is. And meanwhile, in the process, this gentleman, I understand, has separated, divorced. The family could not take the pressure of all this happening in their lives, and it's disastrous to the family, to my knowledge. We are undergoing all kind of stress. Me and my wife, we are discussing this all the time. As it's very natural to be discussing what are the alternates for us if this thing happens, because nobody knows really what can happen.
Would you lose, this is your one source of income?
That's the only source of income I have.
Then the city, people always have the myth of that one can retrain. They would say, if I were to play devil's advocate as why would this person have to stay here since, it's better for the average person, it's a liquor store, and the idea is that you're a person, you're trained as an engineer. It's just because you didn't want to do something, so you followed your path, and unfortunately it fell apart. What would you say to that?
Well, so far as engineering goes, it's a dynamic field. After 22 years of absence from the field, I'm literally an illiterate engineer. I'll have to retool myself. My field has flown by me by now. When I was working, there was normal reading I used to have was at least 3-4 professional periodicals I would be going through to keep abreast of all the developments in the field and so on and so forth, and through the networking what was happening in my field all around me. And so I don't think I can go back and get a job as an engineer now. And I'm 62 years old, and normally people start thinking to be retiring at 65. So to be in this situation at my age, it's not a pretty thought.
Are you carrying any kind of debt load that also would impede, your life beyond the idea of just losing your establishment?
Most certainly. I have mortgage on my home. It's all not paid for. So we are definitely constantly worried that once we lose this business, source of income is gone, and what we do after that. So we have to really restructure our whole life all around the new developments that are going to happen if this goes through.
Now, when people, just so people can get an idea of what kind of property you're talking about, you're literally a stone's throw away from the beach, from the Atlantic Ocean, and you're in a beachfront district that was supposed to be developed, and then it was supposed to benefit all the people that were here. So which we see all over the place, that there's things that are told that it's going to benefit the entire area, like Atlantic City, for instance, that was supposed to benefit the entire area, and then you go 4 blocks away from the beach and you're back in the ghetto. So can you talk about that a little bit? Like, in other words, because when people say, like, these arts district, as a matter of fact, I'm sorry, let's bounce back to the arts district thing, because that was never really kind of flushed out, because it makes it sound like, hey, everybody would want an arts district, right?
Yes. Here what they're contemplating to develop this area as they call it entertainment district, and they want to bring in here restaurants, and 2 theaters are supposed to be brought into this area, and eateries and all that. So it's and they want to anchor this area by with some kind of national retail at both ends of the block.
Do you know what stores? What big box stores?
Yes, and in one of the city meetings, I had raised this question during the hearing, that if the Broadway Arts Center had any memorandum of understandings or any kind of negotiations they were in, and I was told that other than whatever they have right now in this block, they had no such thing. They had no MOUs, no contracts, nothing so far. And it's understandable. Nobody want to come in such a situation. Nobody want to come in such a situation where the financial certainties are not there.
How long have you been fighting this battle?
Going to third year now, almost 3 years. We are in litigation, and we are in the appellate division now. So, and the city wants to basically turn the wheel faster and put us through more like a ringer to go get a stay order or something. Otherwise, they're pretty well positioning themselves to take the properties under eminent domain and wreck the buildings if we don't come to some kind of terms with them.
Well, I mean, I know that Long Branch has been talking about development for a very long time. So prior to this 3-year period, what preceded that? Like, in other words, like, you've been here, when did you originally come here?
Almost 20 years now.
Okay, so in the beginning, when they were working on redeveloping this area, then what were they telling you then?
Oh, there was the initial, I remember very well, excuse me, that the first presentation by the master developer, which is Thompson Group, this was house full, almost 200 local residents in presence, and mayor and the entire municipal administrative body was there, and everybody was reassured that on the waterfront it will be an infill. So basically they were told, the residents were told, that their property is not going to be taken. Only the empty lots, or which were run-down buildings, they would be literally refurbished or do whatever is possible with them, and the whole area would be brought about to life. And similar assertions were later made when our portion of the city was, this Broadway Arts District was adjoined to this development happening here, that all the local business people would be left as they are, and they would be either assisted or would be expected to bring about nice, beautiful facade which would be in concert with the development plan. So everybody was very happy, and so was I. And we still actually, we want to be piece and part of the development. If we were allowed to remain here and develop our own property, we would be more than, and actually all the litigants in our suit, which is one of the doctors in the area who has been practicing for a number of years. He has some clientele of 8,000 odd patients he's been serving for last number of years. I think it's almost 12, 13 years he's in this area. And we want to do whatever it takes to be in concert with the master plan. But the thrust seems to be that we don't want to do none of that. Just get the hell out of here and just give us your property for whatever price they want. So they want to dictate the terms.
So when did this actually? That year was when? That plan. In other words, that time frame was for the plan was when?
This is going back almost 10 years.
Okay, so then what was the transitional point?
Transitional point to our section of the development.
Right. Well, just in general, where it seemed like where it went from, it was supposed to be just filling in the areas. Like when did that plan switch?
Well, my understanding now, in retrospect, is that the infill was never the plan. Infill was never the plan of the city, but just to sell the plan itself, they somehow misrepresented this, and which to this day all the families in the Metotsa area have been complaining. That's been their issue, that you told us right from the get-go that it's not going to affect any of the existing residents. All the development will happen in the areas which are dilapidated, the buildings that are broken down and in bad shape, empty lots, and so on and so forth. So they have been taken by surprise.
So this was kind of a bait and switch where they got people to support the plan originally on the basis that they were going to be able to not only keep their property, but it was going to be a beautification project.
Absolutely.
And then it turned into what we have now.
Then what it has turned into is gentrification project. That they are basically they have pushed out almost everybody from almost 80-90% of the area which they have acquired.
Can you talk about what that mass would look like for somebody who doesn't know the region?
Well, to give you some sense, now the average apartment in this area which has been developed in the waterfront, the apartments were going for something like $860,000. Now, to be able to afford $860,000 worth of residence, the bank normally, under normal conditions, gives you 30% of your gross income, no more than 30%. So one would have to be a millionaire to be able to live there. And those were not the people that were living there. They're living in nice, modest, well-kept cottages, lakes by the waterfront, forever and ever. So they were literally, in one word, they were deceived.
And can you talk about the size of the region in question?
This is almost a mile of a stretch in front of the water. And now they are coming inland in the business district, which they are suggesting run as far back as to the existing city hall, which is 5 blocks. And they seem to be acquiring block on either side of the main business district, which is like on Broadway, all along Broadway.
Where do you find hope in this, and what would you hope that other people would do?
If I had any say, frankly speaking, it's a hopeless situation so far as I see from my present stance, that it's a rapid fire kind of a situation. The city has already served us 14-day notice, And we wait every day, literally every day, to hear from them after meeting with them as what they intend to do.
What do you intend to do?
Well, literally they're painting me in a corner and other litigants with me. So once they leave us with no option but to litigate it and fight for a right, that's what we will do. That's what we will do. And my intent is to take my message to one and all that this is not my issue and this is not my situation. It can happen to anybody living in United States of America, anywhere. And this seems to be lost so far on masses that I don't think everybody is understanding this to the extent, because I do not see our own legislative body giving any serious thought to it. They are just involved in day-to-day operation of the legislative body, while this process is going on literally unnoticed. Literally unnoticed. People are losing their homes, people are losing their businesses, and it's like a tidal wave hitting the edge of a cliff, and slowly but surely it's knocking, and the edge is getting eroded, and we are being the victims, one after the other, one after the other. But after everything is said and done, my sense of it is that this goes so much against my fundamental beliefs and understanding of life in America that I am getting to a point where I would be, and I am contemplating to go on hunger strike, civil agitation, and literally put up a tent right here in my property, on my property, in my store, wherever it's possible, and go on hunger strike. And I would like to see this addressed, or I'm willing to die for it.
Well, thank you very much.
I thank you.
I said, sit down. Tell me about it.